This video offers political analysis and commentary based on current reporting and public debate. Some statements reflect opinion and interpretation rather than established fact. We encourage viewers to independently verify the facts and form their own opinions.
So Keir Starmer's scrapping of his flagship plan for mandatory digital IDs joins a long list of policy U-turns he's made on issues including winter fuel payments, sickness and disability payments, the farmland inheritance tax and the two-child benefit cap.
Keir Starmer's premiership is currently weathering a storm as some Westminster insiders sarcastically describe it as his 13th nervous breakdown. The latest flashpoint, a dramatic retreat on mandatory digital IDs, a policy once hailed by some as a modern solution to illegal immigration and state efficiency, but now discarded into the growing pile of Labour's policy reversals. After months of signalling a shift toward a compulsory digital identity framework, the Prime Minister has officially stepped back, giving the scheme optional and leaving his authority under intense scrutiny. This isn't just a minor technical adjustment. It's a symbolic collapse of a flagship agenda. The data behind this retreat is startling, with exact figures vary by poll. But commentators noted a sharp collapse in support in the summer of 2025, based on polling referenced by commentators at the time. The concept of a digital ID held a respectable 35% popularity rating. However, as soon as it became a centrepiece of Keir Starmer's agenda, that support evaporated, slumping to a staggering -4%, as some insiders describe it as the reverse Midas touch, the phenomenon where any policy Starmer touches seemingly loses its lustre with the public.
First of all, I think it's telling, as Alva reported in her piece for the New Statesman, which is really good, which all of our listeners should go and read, the polling really changed on this policy quite rapidly. So it had 35% popularity in the summer of 2025. In the weekend after that had been announced by Keir Starmer, it slumped to -14%.
This toxic association suggests that the government's brand has become so polarised that even sensible administrative reforms are viewed through a lens of deep suspicion the moment they are branded as Starmerism. Political strategists warn that if this trend continues, the administration risks poisoning its own legislative agenda before it even reaches the floor of the Commons. This shift in sentiment forced Number 10 into a strategy known as scraping the barnacles off the boat. The phrase, borrowed from the David Cameron era, refers to the urgent need to strip away complicated, unpopular policies that distract from the government's core message. For Starmer, that core message is supposed to be the cost of living crisis. Yet, by allowing the digital ID debate to fester, the government inadvertently fed into a narrative of state overreach. Civil liberties groups, and even some cabinet members, were left wondering why the government was prioritising a digital ID system when right-to-work checks already exist and the public is more concerned about their energy bills. The push for digital IDs didn't emerge from a vacuum. It has been a long-standing crusade of the Tony Blair Institute, which has argued that a digital-first state is essential for modern governance. For a while, it seemed Starmer was fully on board, viewing the IDs as a tool to demonstrate a tough-on-migration stance. By making IDs mandatory, the government hoped to create a clear blue water between its approach and the perceived chaos of previous administrations. Critics frequently point to the reportedly revolving door between the Tony Blair Institute, suggesting that Starmer has effectively politically outsourced his radical reform agenda to a think tank that remains out of touch with the modern electorate. This reliance on Blair-era blueprints has led to accusations that the current leadership is simply attempting a technocratic reboot of the 2000s, failing to realise that the public's appetite for centralised state databases has only soured in the intervening decades. However, the execution was widely panned as cavalier. The policy was launched on a Friday, traditionally a day for burying bad news, only to be met with a wall of silence from the front bench in the following weeks. This lack of a coherent story or argument allowed the vacuum to be filled by what Labour insiders call conspiracy theory nonsense, claims critics dismissed as an exaggerated Chinese-style social credit system, where jaywalking could lead to points being docked from a digital profile. Without a strong defence from the Prime Minister, these fears took root, making the policy politically toxic.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister's latest U-turn? I feel like I say that every week. Mandatory digital ID was a rubbish policy, and we on this side of the House are glad to see the back of it. Yeah. But yesterday, the Health Secretary said the Prime Minister's New Year's resolution should be, and I quote, to try to get it right first. To try to get it right first time. He did say that. My question is, does he agree? The winter fuel allowance, U-turn. Waspy women, U-turn. The two-child benefit cap, U-turn. Grooming gangs inquiry, U-turn. The family farms tax, U-turn. Digital ID.
The digital ID reversal is not an isolated incident. It follows a series of high-profile reverse ferrets on winter fuel payments, the two-child benefit cap, and inheritance tax on farmland. Political analysts like Paul Sinclair, a former advisor to Gordon Brown, argue that this government lacks the clear vision that defined the Thatcher or Blair eras. While those leaders were often unpopular, the public perceived them as strong. Starmer, by contrast, is increasingly seen as a leader who turns a corner only to find himself in a blind alley. This growing list of retreats, now numbering 13 significant reversals by some counts, has led to a perception of what critics call spineless administration that only listens once the political damage is irreversible. Critics argue that by the time the Prime Minister scrapes the barnacles off his boat, the hull is already taking on water, leaving the public to wonder if any flagship policy is truly safe from the next tactical retreat.
Paul, so there's been more than a dozen U-turns in, 18 months? I mean, why is Keir Starmer having to do this when he's got a big majority?
I think because it's not thought through. I mean, I met two senior Labour figures today, one of whom had got the title to the Rolling Stones song wrong and was singing "Here Comes My 13th Nervous Breakdown." And when he was corrected and told the song's actually your 19th nervous breakdown, he said, "Don't worry, give it a couple of weeks and it'll be apposite." I mean, the problem with this government is when it started, when it hit rocky period just a few months in, they said it didn't have good communications. So they sacked the Director of Communications and put him in the House of Lords, by the way, that they were going to abolish. And then it was said that they needed to have a story to tell. Now it seems they don't even have a story in their own heads of what they're trying to do.
This perceived weakness is creating a contagion effect within the Parliamentary Labour Party, PLP. Many of the new intake of Labour MPs who gave up successful careers to enter Parliament are now worried they will be one-term MPs. They are finding it difficult to defend the government on the doorstep when they don't know if the policy they are advocating for today will be scrapped tomorrow. The frustration has reached such a pitch that even loyalist backbenchers like Carl Turner have reportedly sent the Prime Minister blunt messages, telling him he should be ashamed of certain policy directions, particularly regarding changes to jury trials. As the Prime Minister's authority erodes, the vultures are starting to circle. While no one is yet plotting, many in the cabinet are planning. According to political journalists, the shadow leadership contest is quietly playing out in the corridors of power. Figures like Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham are being watched closely as they develop their own economic and social platforms, preparing for a potential post-Starmer era. Tensions have escalated to the point where senior cabinet ministers are reportedly urging the Prime Minister to sack Streeting for his increasingly vocal critique from within, which many see as an obvious attempt to audition for the top job. Meanwhile, Burnham's allies are allegedly scouting North West by-election seats to facilitate his return to Westminster. Opponents argue this reflects proxy war between the technocratic right and the devolved populist left of the party. The upcoming elections in May are being viewed as a make-or-break moment. If Labour suffers heavy losses in Wales and Scotland, the soft left and the modernisers may move from planning to plotting. The Prime Minister's allies insist that the party has no appetite for a leadership contest during a time of global instability. But the reality is that many MPS are looking toward the May results with a sense of existential threat from Reform UK and a resurgent Conservative Party. Perhaps the most damaging criticism levelled against the current administration is its perceived lack of empathy and connection to the public. Paul Sinclair pointed to the Prime Minister's recent comment about the UK being an island of strangers, a phrase that echoed the divisive rhetoric of the past and had to be walked back days later. This casual approach to language and policy suggests a government that is not listening, as it claims, but rather one that is panicking. The backlash was swift, with critics arguing the phrase was a tin-eared echo of Enoch Powell's strangers in their own country rhetoric, forcing Starmer into a humiliating public apology where he admitted he deeply regretted the choice of words. This linguistic blunder has become a shorthand for a leadership that struggles to find an authentic voice. often sounding more like a legal briefing than a unifying vision for a fractured nation. The digital ID saga has become a metaphor for the Starmer project. A technically sound idea, poorly communicated, launched without a mandate, and then abandoned when the going got tough. While the government attempts to refocus on the cost of living, the barnacles of these U-turns continue to cling to the hull of the Labour ship, slowing its momentum and raising questions about whether the adults in the room are actually in control. As the debate over digital IDs fades into an optional scheme, the focus shifts to the next potential U-turn. Will it be jury trials? Will it be the school's white paper? The Prime Minister stands at a crossroads. He can either find a Starmerism that binds his policies together into a coherent narrative, or he can continue to manage the government by retreat. The public debate is no longer just about the merits of a digital identity. It is about the identity of the government itself. With the May elections looming like a Titanic-sized iceberg, Keir Starmer must decide if he is the captain who can steer the ship to safety, or if he is simply presiding over a series of nervous breakdowns. The clock is ticking, and for many in his party, the direction they want him to go is increasingly out the door. That's it for today's deep dive into the growing pressure on Keir Starmer. But what do you think? Is the shift to a voluntary digital ID a sign of a government that listens, or one that's lost its way? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and share it to keep the conversation going. For more political insights and the latest updates from Westminster, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.